United, we hunker down.
Every American has a role to play in defending our nation from this invisible, horrible enemy.
All hands on deck, and we'll all work together.
Each of us, by our actions, a potential speed bump capable of slowing down COVID-19. With millions of Americans sheltering in place and scientists across the globe scrambling to discover solutions, what next for our wounded economy, our sidetracked democratic process, and our future as the world's greatest nation? I'm Greg Groogan, and welcome to What's Your Point, where our panelists call it like they see it. Our world has changed, and this morning, What's Your Point is changing with it, with team members joining us both here at Fox 26 and also from their homes out in the community. Starting us off in the studio, well-known businessman and columnist Bill King. Next up, longtime super neighbor Tomaro Bell. Joining us from home, Charles Blain, founder of the advocacy group Urban Reform. Tony Diaz, host of Latino Politics and News on KFTP Radio, and legendary reporter turned investigative media consultant Wayne Dolcefino. Let's begin. The world's greatest nation all but paralyzed by an invisible microbe, a virus moving from host to host with diabolical efficiency. In the United States, the number of confirmed COVID-19 cases tops 25,000. with 323 fatalities thus far. Our borders with Canada and Mexico have been closed to all non-essential travel. As of yesterday, more than 80 million Americans are in some form of lockdown to combat rapid spread of the coronavirus. Across the globe, eyes have turned to Italy, a country ravaged by the disease with nearly 800 additional deaths in just the last 24 hours. The critical question, will the same level of lethality be replicated here? And do we have the resources necessary to cope with the crisis? Bill King, those are big questions. I ask for your response.
Well, I think, Greg, the problem we've got is that there's so much about this we don't know. And the data coming in from other countries is so incredibly inconsistent. About 2 weeks ago, I started tracking the data from the World Health Organization and posting that spreadsheet up online so people can see it. China apparently got a handle on this. South Korea apparently got a handle on it. Their cases have peaked and started coming down. But Italy, on the other hand, has not slowed down at all. In fact, every day, those cases are increasing pretty dramatically. The fatality rate varies dramatically from one country to another. Italy's is running over 8%. Germany's is 0.2%. China was about 4%. The problem is we're so early into this. I mean, this virus was only discovered about 3 months ago. There's just a huge amount of information that we don't know about it. And I think it's that uncertainty which is driving the anxiety around it.
I want to go down to Wayne Dolcefino, who's over in a nearby neighborhood. I'm not going to tell everybody where you live, but want to get your take on this ongoing crisis.
Okay, so first of all, I was out yesterday. I went to the grocery store. I went over to Lowe's, and so I want to speak without seeming to be insensitive for what I think is a hidden majority of people who are concerned that we acted too soon, that we've acted too much, and that there is still out there, right or wrong, folks, out there a lot of concern that a lot of this early hysteria was politically driven. And that if this is not going to last 2 weeks, and we're talking about months, I think there's a lot of people who are concerned that we have destroyed the economy. Look, I'm a small business guy too, right? I'm very concerned that we have destroyed the economy when, to be honest, 50% of the cases or more are still in like 3 states, and there's probably 30 states where maybe there's 1 or 2 deaths. And we could be looking at months of this, and if that's true, we may have acted too soon. I feel horrible for people that are hurt or have died, but we also have to look at bare facts.
Okay, Tony Diaz, you heard our friend Wayne Dolcefino. Are we overreacting? Okay. Okay, Bill, you just heard Wayne Dolcefino talk about an overreaction, and you usually play things right down the middle. Was there any merit to his argument?
Well, I think Wayne makes the point that at some point in time, the cure is worse than the disease. Whether we're at that point or not, frankly, we don't know. We may never know. What's got everybody concerned here is how fast these numbers are progressing in some countries like Italy. I mean, every day the new cases are going up there by 10, 15%. And so that kind of compounding on a daily basis, it doesn't take long to have, tens of millions of infections across the world very quickly. Now, other places are not going up nearly that quickly. And again, as I mentioned earlier, the fatality rate is very dramatically from one country to another. I think everybody right now in the leadership, and I don't want to really make this political because it seems like to me everybody's sort of in the same mindset at this point, is that everybody's saying, well, let's be safe rather than sorry. Sometimes that's the right strategy, sometimes it's not. But again, the problem is we just don't know right now.
Okay, Charles Blain, founder of Urban Reform, you've been listening to this conversation. Why don't you jump in here?
I disagree with Wayne because I do think that the governments, especially the local governments, have been, I don't want to say blowing this out of proportion, but they've responded aggressively. But the reason they responded aggressively is also because of what Wayne said, is that he was out yesterday. And so we've been hearing a lot about millennials and Gen Zers needing to stay inside because we're the ones going out. But really, it's our parents and our grandparents who are the ones who have been going out as if they're immune to this. And that's the problem, I think. They keep talking about flattening the curve and everybody staying inside. And I think that's what we need to really reinforce. If we didn't take this seriously before, I think, or at least I hope we're starting to take this more seriously now. That's the point, is that we all need to stay inside. I think if you look at, I think it was Singapore and South Korea, the way that they've quickly flattened their curves is very different than some of these other countries. And I don't know that we've in America taken the steps yet to do what they have done to make sure that this goes away as fast as possible. And so I just keep encouraging people to stay inside, and I wish Wayne would have stayed inside yesterday, but hopefully he'll do so going forward.
Charles, I want to ask you another question. Do you believe your generation in particular is disciplined enough to stay inside for potentially months at a time?
I think so. So here's the thing. There's all the reports saying millennials are the ones that are going out. We're not the ones going out. We're at home trying to pay bills. We have back pain because we're nearing our late 30s or early 30s. It's the Gen Zers who are on spring break, who are going out there and who are saying that they're immune to this and they're not concerned about it. So I do think that millennials have the willpower, if you will, to stay inside. I think we understand how serious this is. I think it's the younger generation that we really need to hammer this home for. My niece, our kids, your guys' kids, people like that who are younger than us, who need to be reminded that this is serious and they're putting other people's lives at risk.
Okay, I'm going to go back to Wayne Dolcefino. Wayne, you just heard Charles. What's your take or what's your rebuttal?
Well, I guess first of all, I was cooking spaghetti yesterday, but I also needed toilet paper. So shoot me, I went out to the grocery store. Look, I understand that people are nervous. I also understand that the national media, look, and I think this is a time when people should be listening to local media, not national media, because I think the national media from the very beginning has a political tinge to their coverage, to their questions. I understand taking precautions. And every time I walk into my house, I have a brand new grandbaby in my house. My wife makes me wash my hands and sing the happy birthday song because that's how long you're supposed to wash your hands. I get it. No one's being irresponsible here. I'm just telling you that everywhere I went yesterday, all kinds of folks were all saying the same thing when they were looking at the empty shelves in the grocery store. And come on, look, this isn't about whether I'm trying to downplay this or not. I'm just telling you what folks on the street are saying, guys. And that is what it is. The libertarian in me doesn't like this. Libertarian in me didn't like closing the rodeo when we did. I thought it was too early. Libertarian in me doesn't like telling a restaurant owner that he can't separate people by tables and that he have to shut this down and lay off all these people because this money, whether it's $1 million or $2 trillion or $3 trillion, ain't going to help them. And with all due respect, I may make more than the average bear, but my company would be devastated in a very short time, and nobody's giving me any money. So I'm also looking out for numero uno here, which is why I've given my folks the chance to work from home, but I'm planning on going to work Monday.
All right, we're going to leave it right there. Up next, the coronavirus and its crippling impact on America's economy. Can government aid limit the damage? Watch Your Point. We'll be right back.
Mic check, can I give you?
1, 2, 3, 4.
It is not an overstatement to say COVID-19 is strangling America's economy. Stocks suffered their worst week since the financial crisis of 2008. The benchmark S&P 500 is down 32% off the record high just a month ago. Key industries led by the airlines are urgently requesting emergency bailouts to remain financially stable. Congress and the Trump administration have responded with a proposed $1 trillion stimulus package, half for citizens, half for ailing businesses. Question, is a massive addition to the national debt necessary? And if so, will it be enough? I pose that question to my friend Bill King.
Well, I think the federal government had to step in and do things. I'm not that thrilled about the way they went about this. Frankly, rather than just sending checks to people, I wish we had accelerated some infrastructure projects or even made the unemployment benefit system much more robust than it is. I mean, there'll be people getting checks that frankly are still working from home or still working at their job and don't need it. We should have concentrated that money on the people that really needed it, the ones that got laid off as a result of this. So I'd like double the unemployment benefits, waive some of the qualification rules. But I think the federal government did have to stand in, and this will work as long as we can continue to borrow money. Our national debt is $21 trillion, $22 trillion now, which is an enormous amount. But I will say, compared to some other countries like Japan, it's still relatively low to our gross domestic product. So as long as the federal government can continue to borrow money, and right now they're borrowing it at very low interest rates, I think this is going to be a big help.
Okay, still ahead with markets crashing and pink slips flying. What can be done at the state level to help preserve paychecks? That topic is front and center after a short break. Welcome back. Congressional leaders will meet today to discuss a massive stimulus package intended to combat the economic damage inflicted by the coronavirus. As the economy grounds down to a shadow of its once robust self, the equity markets continue to tumble, along with the retirement savings of millions of Americans. Layoffs, bankruptcies, and a dramatic fall in government revenue are all reasonable expectations after an open-ended disruption of this magnitude. Here in Texas, state leaders have hoarded $11 billion in a rainy day fund designed to stabilize the economy after disaster. Should we be preparing to spend the bulk of it? And I asked that question to my friend Tomaro Bell.
Good morning, Greg. I'm sorry about the mic issues. Listen, I believe that it is time. It is beyond raining. It is storming here. They definitely need to consider looking into that. One thing that Bill said, and I want to piggyback on, I wish that they had looked at doing a stimulus package to get the money to those who need it the most. Sending a money to everybody. Some people are still working and some people are still drawing a paycheck. But those people who work in restaurants and have small businesses, those people who work paycheck to paycheck and hourly, college kids who that money that they're getting in their part-time job is their sustenance, because as you know, most colleges told their dorm students that was in the dorms they had to leave. Now, if you're from out of state and you were like I was when I was down here, you don't even have fare home. It really should have been looked at a lot harder. And for Texas, since we have the money, Texas needs to put the money where their mouth is and help Texans.
Okay, Charles Blain, I want to ask you this question. Republicans in Austin have kept a pretty tight grip on these rainy day dollars. Do you think they might be willing to unload several billion dollars to help folks in hard times during this downturn?
I think they'd be willing to. I mean, I think it's hard to say no in a time like this, seeing what's happening with every industry because of these local government shutdowns and these state shutdowns, seeing what's happening in the oil and gas industry. I don't know how they can't help. But, you know, there was something interesting that happened this week. The Texas comptroller tweeted out on March 20th a reminder that sales tax reports were due because local governments were starving for revenue and needed money. So while your credit card company, loan company, mortgage, car insurance, and everybody else is being lenient during this time of need, the state government is coming to collect their money. So that does signal to me that they might not be so willing to help in the future. But I think local governments here in Texas need to look into immediate tax abatements for qualified homeowners or for business owners, or things to help them, and then seek relief from the state during the next legislative session, because it is the local entities that are shutting down these businesses. And, you know, I tweeted earlier in the week that Houston City Council passed a $43 million tax abatement for a W Hotel. Well, they should pass some sort of relief package where they help tax homeowners and business owners here in the city. So I'm hoping that the city governments and local governments move, and then the state provides them relief at a later date.
Wayne Dolcefino, will it be justified to release multiple billion dollars out of Texas's rainy day fund in response to what's going on with the economy?
Well, it could be, but in a way, again, I don't want to be the bad guy here, I think we're sort of self-creating sort of the problem we're having now. And my point has been this morning that sometimes you act too soon. Look, we were told, stay inside. Look, I'll talk to Charles here. Charles wants me to stay inside for 2 weeks and do nothing, okay? And then magically walk out of my house and everything's going to be okay. That's just not going to happen here, folks. This could go on for months. And so my point has been that we did too much too soon. And my other point is, and again, I'm not trying to diminish anyone getting sick or dying. Look, I have MS. I have diabetes. If anyone in this panel is going to get in trouble, it's going to be me, all right? But let's keep in perspective here. We've got hundreds of cases. We've got 5 deaths. We've got 29 million people in the state. My only point has been that we are ravaging the economy. And my other point is this. I understand that there are a lot of folks who are in a lot worse shape than I do. I am, okay? I've also got employees. Like, I'm going to talk as a small business owner. I've got employees. I've got cars. I've got mortgage, too. So if the government's going to start helping people, I think they should help those folks first, but I think they should be helping everyone if we're going to do that. And I'm not a fan of doing that because I don't think government solves all these problems. The private sector in medicine does.
Okay, next on our table, caught between a price war and a pandemic, much of the Texas oil patch is facing an implosion. We will talk about the fallout, so stay with us. Welcome back. A double whammy has doubled over the Texas oil and gas industry. Plummeting demand combined with a tsunami of cut-rate Saudi and Russian crude has cratered the market. No exaggeration here, no hyperbole. Tens of thousands of layoffs are happening. Halliburton announced this week 3,500 layoffs just in its Houston headquarters. We've been through bust cycles before, but could this one be the worst? What's Your Point contributor Michelle Maples offered us her take.
Now there are 2, I think, important questions that we've got to ask. Question number 1, how low will prices go? And then question number 2, how long will this coronavirus last? Now, unfortunately, I have no idea what the answer is to either one of those questions, but those will impact the oil and gas market here in Houston and in the United States. However, what I do know is that Texas has a rainy day fund that oil and gas companies have been injecting money into since the 1980s. And the purpose of that rainy day fund is to help during these tough economic difficult times. And maybe it is time for our legislators to think about tapping into that resource.
I want to talk to Bill King here. Bill, you know hundreds of people, maybe thousands of people in the oil patch. What's going on out there?
Yeah, so I think this may be a lot more significant than the virus in the long term for Texas and for Houston in particular. Everybody I'm talking to in the industry says there is no catalyst for prices to come back up anytime soon. That this is going to be a multi-year, maybe a decade-long type of event. The problem is we're victims of our own success. We have discovered so much oil inside the United States with fracking, these advanced drilling techniques, that the market is just oversupplied at a time when the world's trying to wean itself off of fossil fuels. Now, like, I'm not saying that fossil fuels are going away tomorrow or anything like that. They're going to be around for a long time. But right now, the long-term supply exceeds the long-term demand, especially with the demand destruction we're seeing going into this particular recession or depression, depending on how bad it gets. So this is going to have long-term ramifications for Texas at every level. You know, speaking of the rainy day fund, that money comes from oil and gas revenues by and large, and it's not going to be replenished as fast if we take some out. Now, I think we ought to take some out and spend it on infrastructure, which we critically need. But the truth of the matter is it's not going to be replaced as fast as it would have been had oil prices stayed up.
Bill, I want to get a take from Charles Blain. You have good contacts in Austin. Do you think Republicans there are concerned about the loss of oil and gas revenue and the amount of money they may have to pay out of the rainy day fund just to get through this crisis?
Yeah, definitely they are. I mean, people are staying home. Flights aren't taking off around the world. Traders are projecting a decrease in demand, I think, by something like 10 to 20 million barrels a day. And then recently in an opinion column, Railroad Commissioner Ryan Sitton said that we're oversupplied by like 10 to 15%. And so he said that was the biggest oversupply since 1974. So I do think that Republican lawmakers are going to have to look at this and look at pulling relief from the rainy day fund. But I think there's going to be, there's always disagreement about pulling from the rainy day fund, but I think particularly now there's going to be disagreement because they've tapped it so many times for things that weren't as critical as this. So I think we're running into a difficult problem going forward.
Tomaro Bell, you have lived in this community much of your life, and you have lived through the bust cycle. Are you concerned about the trickle-down effect to all the businesses in Houston when the oil patch takes it on the chin?
Absolutely. I have to agree with Bill. This one is different from last time because this one, the impact of this, first off, when U.S. started fracking, I was in the Middle East, and one of their concerns was, does the U.S. think we're going to let them become independent of our oil? What is the point of them doing fracking? As I'm not in oil, I told them I really don't know, and I don't own any oil wells. But I know that that was a problem for them. And now Russia has piggybacked on that. And unlike when we had the oil embargo in the 70s when I was in elementary, instead of holding oil back, they're going to produce as much as they can to try to bring us to our knees. If ever there was a chance for Texas to stand up with the rainy day fund, this is it. And I agree with Bill. I think that once this pandemic passes, because it came to pass, y'all, it's going to be all right. It's going to be all right. We got to get through it, but it came to pass. We do need to do infrastructure jobs, and that way that will get the economy moving back instead of just writing checks.
Okay, still to come amid a national crisis. Biden pushes further past Bernie in the rumble for the Democratic nomination. Plus, Texas elections postponed by the governor. We tackle both topics after the break. Amid the ongoing crisis, Democratic frontrunner Joe Biden extended his lead over Bernie Sanders with lopsided primary wins this week, leading some to suggest the national convention in Milwaukee should be canceled as a matter of practicality. Here in Texas, Governor Greg Abbott has decided to postpone May runoff elections to July 14th, rather than conducting contests that are exclusively vote by mail. Wayne Dolcefino, I'm going to go back out to you. Talk about either of those topics, the postponement of the election or Biden moving further past Bernie.
All right, look, Bernie may have lost the political campaign, but I think Bernie, at the end of the day, could win the war with universal health care, because I think what I'm already hearing out there is this clamor to say, see, we told you so. Everybody has to have universal health care. The elections had to be moved, but I want to remind folks that a lot of local government is still meeting. I mean, there's a housing authority meeting on Tuesday, an organization that's embroiled in scandal right now. They're not going to be meeting in person. They're going to be meeting, and you have to call in on the phone to comment. My only point is that a lot of government is still moving on. The only thing that's really changed is the ability of people to cover it, because all the news does right now is the coronavirus. Understandable, but other things are happening.
Okay, Tomaro Bell, Democrats pushed hard to keep the runoff elections in May and have a mail-in ballot election only. What are you hearing out in the neighborhoods?
Well, one of the reasons that people were concerned if they went to mail-in ballots only was because of the controversy that they've had about corruption in the mail-in ballot process. And because they did not believe that that had been addressed and handled in a way where they could feel comfortable that the results had not been tampered with, that is one of the reasons I believe that they decided not to do the mail-in ballots, especially in District B, where the people have been waiting. Some people want to get these races over so that they can move on, and they definitely don't want any of this to impact November.
Okay, Charles Blain, I'm asking you, why did Abbott push these runoffs to July, and does it make sense?
Yeah, I mean, just going to piggyback what Tomaro said, it is the fear of voter fraud with these mail-in ballots. I mean, if you look in the Rio Grande Valley, South Texas, you see a lot of voter fraud cases dealing with mail ballot. And even here in Houston as well, you see this a lot and you hear about it a lot across the country. And so I think that in an effort to stymie that, he's moving the election to July. But I also think there needs to be plans as to what happens if this virus or this outbreak extends to November or October. What are we going to do then? So I think this is a longer term plan that needs to be laid out, but I do applaud him for moving the election rather than shifting to a mail-in ballot only election.
Okay, I'm going to move to Bill King now and ask him to switch gears. Bill, does it make sense to have these national conventions while, our whole society is disrupted?
Well, they're still a little off in the future, and I'm not really a big fan of canceling stuff 3 or 4 months away right now. I think we need to wait and see how this plays out. In China, this thing peaked in about a 30-day period. Now, they took some drastic actions over there. South Korea peaked in about 30 days. They took a different approach, but also some pretty aggressive actions. We need to see what's going to happen in Europe. Right now, the European cases are going up every single day, and there doesn't appear to be any peak. Last week, it looked like Italy was topping off around 3,500 new cases a day, but the last 2 days, they've been up pretty dramatically. And so until we see what happens in Europe, we're really not going to have a feel for what the course of this pandemic is. I think everybody ought to just take a breath and let's see what happens over the next couple of weeks before we start canceling a lot of stuff.
I want to go out to Wayne Dolcefino. Wayne, I heard one scientist modeling fatality potential in the United States of 2 million. Even if we have a fourth of that, 500,000 people, isn't this something we've all got to be focused on almost full time for months to come?
Look, of course we should be focused on it. It's a horrible thing. And look, I don't want to use the hopeful word, because every time the president says that, the media gets mad at him. But I'm hopeful that the medical folks, because we got the best folks anywhere, including right here in Houston, the medical folks are going to figure this out. I'm hopeful that they are. It sounds like there's already some things that show some promise. And I think Bill is exactly right. And it goes to my point about the rodeo. As soon as one person tested positive, we shut down the rodeo. And look, I'm not a big fan of the rodeo. People know that. But you know how many vendors were hurt by that? I just think we have to, be measured. And look, I applaud Mayor Turner for not closing down the city. Look, I get why LA did. I get why New York did. I also continue to point out that more than half the cases are in those 3 places. And I don't want what's going on in New York City. I love them. I'm a New Yorker. I was born there. I don't want what they're doing up there to be dictated to me. The entire country is not shutting down. It's just not.
Okay, I want to take this opportunity to give Tomaro Bell some credit. I know for a fact she's been out there distributing rare masks and also cleaning fluids. Tomaro Bell, as you've listened to our panel talk, what's your reaction?
Wayne is wrong. They should have shut down the rodeo. Just that one man from that one tent. The person in Austin had contact. The Montgomery County case had contact. This is not a joke. When you look at that poor family in New York who had a Sunday dinner that they've been having traditionally for decades, and 3 members are dead and 2, I believe, are in ICU. This is something that you don't know when it gets to your room in your house how it's going to happen. I don't believe we over-responded. I believe local government especially did the right thing. Now, I am extremely upset with the rumors that people keep putting out on social media, and people are calling me asking me if it's true. Look, I promise you, if it comes to that, you will know. You will know. They will let you know. I can say for a fact from the traffic, people are staying home. People are not going out. I've had to go out to get my prescriptions filled, and I went out, and I can honestly say that I see people are adhering, and I believe that if we do what we need to do, we will get through this. And for the clowns who are over there gouging people, I am so glad they're making this a crime. I saw some Vital Oxide, a 32 ounce for $1,700. That's ridiculous. Hospitals need that. They need the mask, they need the supplies so they can come up with a drug to get us all better.
Gotta leave it there. Still ahead, keeping America safe from all threats remains his top priority. Our hot seat conversation with longtime Homeland Security Chairman Michael McCaul is up next, so stick with us. Welcome back. As a longtime chairman and current ranking member of the House Homeland Security Committee, Texas Congressman Michael McCaul has contended with every conceivable challenge to the nation's well-being, including the impact of a deadly pandemic. What was once a hypothetical threat is now unfolding in real time. This week, McCaul offered Fox 26 the benefit of his insight.
When you look at what happened in China, they peaked at a very high level, and as a result, they have a lot of cases and a lot of deaths. Italy followed that same model where they peaked very high. It has destroyed Italy. South Korea, on the other hand, did a lot of advanced testing and then quarantined and contained people and then practiced social distancing, which is what we've been talking about here. I do think for the next 2 months, it's going to get worse, not better. But if we can flatten the curve over the next 2 months and let this virus take its normal progression, going into the summer, most scientists predict that it won't thrive as well in the summer months. And then hopefully by that time, these treatments and vaccine will be on the horizon. But I agree with you. You know, I'm here in Houston and all the restaurants are shut down and bars. And it's a very eerie feeling that I don't think it really, unless you lived around in 1917, which not many people did, it's very eerie, but necessary if we can get this curve flattened out and not let it peak in the United States. When you talk about the test kits, I do think that the CDC at the early stages, quite frankly, I wouldn't give them a very good report card. I don't think they were able to effectively respond to the crisis, even though we raised their budgets by about 30% when we had the majority in the Congress, but they sent out flawed test kits. They didn't have enough test kits. What the president did with his team, the vice president, was unleash the power of the private sector. So now we have companies like LabCorp and Quest that know how to make these test kits fully utilized at full volume capacity to make sure that we make these tests available at drive-in sites throughout this Houston area to eventually where you can go to your Walgreens or CVS and be able to take a swab test at your local drugstore if you have the symptoms and be tested within 24 hours.
Up next, did United States senators use government intel to preserve their personal fortunes? As most American investors took a beating, 2 public servants managed to sell their vulnerable holdings just in the nick of time. We're going to talk about it after the break. Troubling revelations this week that 2 United States senators briefed on the impending threat of COVID-19 unloaded millions of dollars of stock ahead of the massive market correction. With the transactions, Senate Intelligence Chairman Richard Burr and Georgia Senator Kelly Loeffler avoided major losses. Critics say the 2 elected officials used information unavailable to the public to protect their wealth. Both senators deny wrongdoing. Bill King, you deal with complex financial situations all the time. You know the law when it comes to insider trading. Did they cross the line?
Well, traditional insider trading is based on a fiduciary relationship. So a director goes in and sells stock, or a director tells somebody who knows it's fiduciary information and they sell. So this is not insider trading in the classic sense. Congress did pass a law in 2012 called the stock law, which prohibits them trading on information they have that the public doesn't have. But the penalties are pretty minor to that, by the way. Whether or not they were trading on some information that the rest of us didn't have, you know, that remains to be seen, but it certainly ought to be investigated. Okay,
Tomaro Bell, I want to go to you because you have one of the best smell tests I know. How does it smell to you?
It stinks. Martha Stewart went to jail and had to have orange as her new black because of just this. It stinks.
That's it?
Yeah.
Okay, Wayne Dolcefino, you've uncovered over your long career lots of misdoings. Does this rise to the level of sanction in your mind?
Well, it could be, but again, since we're all supposed to know what was going to happen 5 years down the road or 5 months down the road, look, anyone who was actually paying attention to what was going on in China, who freaked out then, would have sold their stocks, right? If I had done that, I'd be a happier guy. I haven't even looked at my 401k, which isn't that big, but I ain't looking because I don't want to know.
You don't want to know? We want to know. You going to give us a report next week?
Know.
You going to tell us how you're doing?
Because then I'm going to blame Charles Blain and Tomaro Bell and all the people out there that wanted life to end as we know it, when for all we know, a month or 6 weeks from now, we're going to have medicines that may help slow this down. I am not willing at this point to say that the worst case scenarios are going to happen. We still live in a state with 29 million people with only a handful dead. I'm so sorry for them and their families. But let's put this in some perspective and be somewhat more measured. I'm tired of hearing every 5 minutes that the world is ending, because it ain't.
Okay, Wayne, it's not ending, but people are staying at home by the millions. Is this serious business?
No, look, Greg, I'm not discounting that it's not serious. And I think there are things that all of us should be doing, right? Washing your hands, keeping some distance. Look, I'm still running my company. I've given people the option of coming to work or working from home.
Wayne, I got to stop you right there. We got to go to break. We're going to continue the conversation. When we return, Harris County releasing dozens of jail inmates as a precaution against coronavirus escalation. Is it a smart move or a potential threat to public safety? That debate when we come back. Welcome back. Out of an abundance of caution, Harris County this week began reducing the size of its jail population. Given the threat of COVID-19 transmission, Sheriff Ed Gonzalez and Houston Police Chief Art Acevedo have ordered officers to limit arrests. While Gonzalez says no violent defendants are being recommended for release, Judge Deshaun Jones cut loose a man charged with murder after the accused killer expressed fear of contracting the coronavirus in jail. Fox 26 legal analyst and Watch Your Point contributor Chris Triticos sent us this take.
Well, here we go again. The sheriff objecting to the sound discretion of a sitting district court judge who released someone pending trial on a murder case because of the coronavirus. Well, Sheriff, you instructed your deputies not to make arrests of people in the field because of the coronavirus and filling up the jail. Was anybody second guessing that decision, Sheriff? And how many of those people have gone on to commit additional crimes? Who's following up on that? A little pot calling the kettle black here, Sheriff?
Woo, fighting words. Charles Blain, want to get your take. I know you've been following this development. Are we right to reduce the jail population?
When you listen to what Gonzalez is saying about not, deferring arrests, if you will, for nonviolent offenders and releasing older folks and pregnant women and things like that, I don't think that is the bad take. What we saw with Deshaun Jones releasing a violent criminal who said that he needed to be released because he was afraid of coronavirus, that's very different. That's using a crisis to push a political agenda. We often talk about on this show the criminal justice reform pendulum swinging side to side. And I think we're seeing that now, is that we're seeing in Houston and other cities this pendulum swing far to the progressive side during this crisis because they're pushing a reform item that they want to see.
Charles, I want to hear from Tomaro Bell real quickly. Tomorrow, was Judge Jones in the right here?
Wrong. He was in the wrong. One of the things about this thing, and I don't want people to be hyperbole or you just saying this, there you have defoggers called vityl oxide that most prisons use anyway. They could have sprayed some of that. You can't just stop arresting people and start releasing anybody, because then the public safety is put in double jeopardy.
Okay, still ahead. We're going to go to break now. Never has sound leadership been more crucial. Our panel tells us who is excelling and who is stumbling in the ongoing struggle with COVID-19. Stay with us. What's your point? We'll be right back. The World Health Organization says 20 different coronavirus vaccines are in development, but none are expected to be available within the next year. That single fact adds tremendous gravity to the decisions made now and in the coming weeks and begs the question, how are our leaders performing on the national, state, and local level? I ask Bill King, first of all.
Well, candidly, I'm reluctant to start grading people's papers right now. First of all, I don't know that we have information to do that. But secondly, anytime we do that, it's unquestionably going to turn partisan. And I agree with Wayne. The national media especially, all of this has a partisan spin on it. If you're watching CNN or MSNBC, it's, Trump's doing a terrible job. If you're watching Fox, he's doing a great job. We need to lay all that aside right now and deal with the facts. And one of the reasons I'm also reluctant to criticize people at this point in time, because the math on this is really very, very tricky. If you look at, let's just take China, for example, the Hubei province, which was the worst place, the outbreak of this, at the end of the day, 0.1% of the people in the Hubei province were infected. Now, if that's what we're looking at in the future, then this is going to be not a big event. But when you look at Italy, and it's accelerating every single day, that's a very different kind of event.
Got to stop you there, Bill. I want to go out to Wayne Dolcefino. You've been watching the performance of state, local, and national leaders. What's your take?
All right, so look, I don't want the liberal governor of New York or the even more liberal governor of California running our country for us in coronavirus. I think Mayor Turner has been very measured, and I applaud him for that. I think Greg Abbott has done the right thing, and I think everyone should understand that Donald Trump, whether you like him or hate him, this is really hard, guys. It's really hard, and I think we should all pray that he does whatever he can do to make this a safer ending for us.
Tomaro Bell, I want to hear from you. What's your assessment of our local leadership and the president?
Well, first off, I want to applaud Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee for getting that testing site. Testing is critical to the stopping of this, and I want to applaud her. I applaud Mayor Turner and Lena Hidalgo for doing what they felt we needed to do to get this under control. But I want to applaud the business community in Houston, the Houston distillery that is now going to do hand sanitizer instead of liquor, as somebody who don't drink. I think that is a phenomenal thing that they do. And for GM and Ford to step up and start doing ventilators. But I need to tell corporate America, this is what happens when you outsource and send out of the country things that we need. Medical equipment should always be one of the priorities that we keep to keep our nation safe at home.
Want to go to Charles Blain real quickly. Charles, your assessment of leadership thus far?
Yeah, so, last week I had a mixed grade. This week I think it's a B across the board. But where I take issue with a lot of our elected officials is that what we're seeing at every level of government is a failure to protect our civil liberties and our freedoms. On the local, state, federal levels, we've seen requests for indefinite expansion of emergency powers, requests to detain individuals indefinitely without trial, forced closure of businesses, things like this. And I think government always uses a crisis to try to expand itself. And so I think people need to stay abreast of that and start paying attention to that aspect of it as well.
Okay. Just ahead, the discussion continues on a national level with Fox News Sunday and host Chris Wallace. From all of us here on the What's Your Point crew, have a safe and healthy week until we meet again.